I just love this guy, I have to tell you that. You know, he came to Egypt and the only person he wanted to meet was the Pope, you know. So and I thought, like, a guy who works in technology, I mean, I'm a very strong believer myself, and I try to avoid talking about that because, I mean, people expect a businessman to be tough and ruthless and possibly not very a strong believer, you know. But I thought I was the only one. Then I met this guy who says he wants to meet the Pope when he comes to Egypt. I mean, and I took him and we went 7 o'clock in the morning to meet the Pope, you know. And it was an amazing experience because, I mean, the Pope was in his best mood. He's 90 years old, you know, and I think he sensed that there is some spiritual elements here in the atmosphere because it was a very good meeting, you know. So, Jim, thank you very much for having me here. I'm very proud. I'm a person that really likes Canada. So, I mean, even though my investment experience here has has a lot of shortcomings, but I will speak from the heart because I want what's best for Canada, because I think what's best for Canada is also what's best for Win Canada. And I'll start with maybe what's happened in my country in like 15 minutes, and then I'll have another 5 minutes to nag about my Canadian experience, you know. So in my country, what happened exactly was that when the revolution went out in Tunisia, people thought that this is just a Tunisian event, and I was sure that this is not a Tunisian event because we were experiencing in Egypt in the fall of 2010 really a lot of things which showed us that this regime cannot sustain what's happening, because what they used to do is force the elections, and they would leave like 5%, 10% for the opposition, so we would have a decorative opposition to show that there were some guys who made it, even though they were falsifying the results, you know. But then they got themselves a genius who decided that even this 5 or 10% is too much, and we need to have a full control over the parliament, because apparently the engineer of this parliament wanted to give the country to the successor of Mubarak, his son, who, by virtues of, I don't know, maybe as a birthday present or whatever he thought. And he said, we don't want any voices in the parliament that will just offset this plan. But it was a very stupid act, because it's like when you have a small window that is getting some kind of oxygen inside, and then you decide even that is too much and you close it. So you're asking for an explosion. And the explosion came January 25, and fueled by the BlackBerries and the laptops and so on, the generation that was the bloggers, you know, who were telling everybody we cannot just watch this happening. And they went on the streets in January 25 to start. And none of us who supported this revolution thought that this is going to be for real, that in 18 days a regime that has been there for 40 years will collapse the way it collapsed. But it did, and these beautiful young people, and I think half of the Orascom Telecom team, which is hundreds, were in the square, and we were, as Jim said, we were supporting this. I supported this revolution, although it was a very dangerous move, because Mubarak was still in rule, and the Minister of Defense, Minister of Interior, all the big guys were there. And I remember when I was publicly asked whether I am with the revolution or with the regime, and I said I'm with the revolution. Once I went down from the TV station, my dad called from London, from Paris, where he was having an operation. And I said, was it you? Is this for real what you said now? I mean, are you okay? I mean, are you crazy? My younger brother actually called. I said, are you crazy? And he said, what went into your mind? And then I remember, because I knew exactly the consequences. I mean, we didn't know this revolution will succeed or not. And if it did not, I won't be here. I wouldn't have been here today, so for sure. And I told my younger brother, look, Nasif, and he's not as emotional as I am, and he's not as a believer like I am. He's very, shrewd, very down to earth. He's a real businessman with a strong mind, and his heart is not as strong as mine, So I tried to explain it to him in his language. It didn't work, so I told him, look, in life, there are situations that happen, then you either have to do the right thing or you do the wrong thing. And you have to decide, and you have to take the blame for deciding to do the right thing. The right thing was to side with this revolution because they said all the right things, so don't worry. And in his sarcastic way, after posing a lot because he was shocked that I've confirmed my position even to him, he said, well, maybe as usual you'll be lucky because these guys are so stupid and they're going to do every stupid stuff and I think they might fail, and maybe you were right. Anyhow, God will be with you because I'm not going to be with you. And then the revolution succeeded, but then unfortunately all these good kids with good intentions, good principles, who went out to fight for the right of voice, for the right of democracy, for freedom, for a better Egypt, decided that their mission was accomplished, the regime has fallen, and now they can go home to their lives, and they left the square empty. And then we had all these fundamentalist extremist forces move into the square and hijack the revolution. And in the beginning, it was a very astonishing scene. We saw good-looking kids, long hair, guitar, beards, girls unveiled, veiled. You know, it was like a youth movement, and all these people disappeared. Then we had some people with long beards going at the stage, calling for the holy war with Israel. It was not the story at all. People didn't go in the streets of Egypt to debate the Palestinian-Israeli debate or talk about Allah or religion. They went to fight for the freedom and the freedom of speech and democracy. We had other voices, and the revolution was hijacked. Then many events happened to that area, and more and more we saw some support to the extreme religious forces taking over, manipulating the scene in Egypt, and it was not anymore the Egypt we've known. You know, we also felt that. I'm glad the Egyptian ambassador is not here, so I can say that we felt even that the military in charge are really siding with these new forces. You know, so it was a big disappointment. And personally, I found the scene to be very empty. Everybody disappeared. My business colleagues either were in jail or left the country. So we were alone, and I decided that I have to continue. So we initiated this Liberal Party. And now here we are. We're facing these elections in 2 weeks. And it's not a fair fight because the Muslim Brotherhoods have been in Egypt for 80 years. They're well organized, they're branched all over the country, they have followers of 1 million. They're funded from Qatar and Saudi Arabia. Right now my party is funded from my own pocket, you know. It's deep, but I don't feel like like I have to pay the bill on my own. I would have loved to have some participation. So finally, towards the end, I have 1 or 2 other businessmen who came in and they're helping. But it's an unfair fight, based on funding, based on history. They're 80 years, we're only 6 months. But we had no choice because we believe unless there's any voice of reason that will balance this movement, Egypt will be turned into another Iran, and the Western free world will suffer from the fact that he's watched this happen without interfering. You know, I mean, the argument here is very nice. I mean, we in the West say we can't interfere because, you know, governments don't like that. Yes, fine, but the other guys are interfering. You know, the other guys in Qatar are sending hundreds of millions to the Muslim Brothers. The Saudis are sending money to the Salafis, the extremists, you know. So who's helping us, you know? So if you wait and see, that's what we did with the Iranian revolution. We watched the Shah leave, you know, and the revolution. We thought everybody's in this revolution. And then Khomeini came and hijacked it too. And now we have to deal with a guy who looks like more of a mechanic or a plumber. And he says, I have a nuclear bomb and I'm going to wipe Israel off the map, you know. So, and now we have to deal with this. So how much lives are going to be lost trying to combat a lunatic like that if we did prevent them from coming to the first place? Anyhow, my hope is that the Arab Spring will spread to Iran and the Iranians will go and move this regime too. It's one of the worst in the world and it is not less than ours here. So how am I doing on time? Okay, good. Now, so in 2 weeks we have these elections, and my only hope is, and it's a fact, that if we can mobilize all the, I mean, what I'm telling everybody, if you want to know the situation in Egypt, the majority of the active political forces are religious, so they will vote for the religious movements, but the majority of the population are unfortunately passive, but they would vote for a liberal civil state. But the problem is, will they really go on November 28th, wake up early like the other guys who go to pray in the dawn and sleep in front of the ballots to prevent others from coming? Will they go and vote, or will they go and find a very long line and just leave? Like I had a meeting this morning with the Coptic community in Toronto here, and they told me they're trying to access the site to vote, and the site is blocked. Now we hear that the site in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait is not blocked. So I mean, you're like helping the other forces vote, and the liberal forces, which are Egyptians who live in this liberal world here, which would vote for us, are unable to vote. So I hope at the day of the election that this will not be the case, and all these passive people will move, and then we have a real chance. Anyhow, I've told my friends at the Muslim Brotherhood's front that if you think we're going to quit because you're going to win a majority, you're in for a big surprise. We're going to stay in Egypt. We're going to fight it out because most Egyptians want a civil state. You know. Now we go back to Canada.